Now, I've heard of the Occluded Training.
Oh, yeah, I guess that is pretty non-conventional.
I would say that's extremely non-conventional. What is that?
So I'll give kind of the chronological background of occlusion training. I actually discovered this, I didn't discover it, okay, sorry. I came across this, I was looking through, there was this, my friend sent me this big journal article. It's like that thick, like 40 pages on a meta-analysis of hypertrophy research. And I was looking through this journal, and it was basically a compilation of a bunch of these studies on muscle growth. And they kept mentioning this Katsu training, and I was looking at the results from this stuff, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Because these guys are getting great results, like they were taking people and getting like 2 and 3 inch increases on their leg measurements. Like, well, what the hell is this stuff? And it's called Katsu. And I looked it up, and it's actually the occlusion training. Katsu is the Japanese name for it because it started in Japan. And the guy that came up with it was like in the 1970s, and I guess he was at some kind of party, and he was sitting down, Indian style, and noticed that one of his legs kind of fell asleep. And he said, oh man, I kind of get that same kind of numbness sometimes when I train. I wonder if there's anything there. So what occlusion is you actually you occlude, you restrict blood flow to the area when you work out. So like let's say you're doing leg extensions. They actually have what's called Katsu, they're not wraps, but it's basically a Katsu cuffs. And you put it around your limb, your leg, or your arm, and you pump it up, and it basically gets real tight, and you restrict blood flow. And so what they found was they did some research on this stuff, and they had these people just walk occluded for half an hour, where they would have periods where they'd reduce the occlusion and then increase it. And so all they had these people do was walk, and their legs grew with occlusion. And then they did experiments in rats where they took they actually surgically occluded veins in these animals for long periods of time. And again, their legs grew. So something was going on. So they started trying it with regular training, with leg extensions and arm curls and stuff. Sure enough, noticeable increases in hypertrophy from it. Now, basically, like how you would do it, like how I do it, is for like leg extensions. I'll take a pair of knee wraps and I'll wrap them real tight around my upper thigh. And then what I do is basically 4 sets, 4 clusters, and I keep the wraps on the entire time. And the first set will be like 50% of your 1 rep max, and I'll do like 15 reps. In the first set, it doesn't feel that bad, it's not hard. And then you rest like 1 minute between sets, keep the wraps on, and then you go to failure each set after that for the 3 subsequent sets. And it's the most painful training you could possibly imagine. I mean, imagine somebody sticking a hot poker into your leg, and that's what it feels like. And also like blowing your leg up like a balloon. I mean, it's the craziest pump you've ever felt in your life. And now a lot of people will say, well, do you think it's better than heavy training? Because you're using light weights with this. You're using light weights. But because of the occlusion, what happens is, I don't know if you're aware of something called the priority principle of fiber type recruitment. You recruit your muscle fibers in order, slow twitch to fast twitch. So you recruit all your slow twitch first, and then once you start getting into heavier loads, you start recruiting intermediate and then fast with super heavy loads. What occlusion does is by occluding blood flow, you pre-exhaust all your slow twitch fibers, your small type 1 fibers, because they're dependent on oxygen. So since you're not getting as much oxygen, you're pre-exhausting them. So you're preferentially hitting your fast twitch fibers, even though you're using light weight. So in my opinion, it's not necessarily a replacement for heavy training, but it's a great supplement because think about, you can, like if you have an injury, like let's say you've got really, really bad knees, and you've got a lot of inflammation and you can't train heavy for a few weeks, you got to back off. You can still get muscle gains doing this style training, but you're using 50% of the weight you'd normally use. So, and they've actually done studies on people, like they had somebody with ACL reconstruction, and they just had him doing super light weights, but occluded, and they didn't lose any muscle off their thigh during the comeback from ACL surgery, which is crazy. So it's really a nice supplement to heavy training. And again, I'll do it at the end of several workouts just to get a really good pump going. But I really use a lot of it when I'm deloading. When I'm backing off the heavy weights for a while. I'll do a lot of occlusion training to keep my muscle and to keep making gains, but still giving my joints that break. And it's great for people because it doesn't cause that massive muscle damage because you're not using as heavy weights, so you can do it more frequently. The other thing they've shown is you get about a 3 times greater growth hormone response to this kind of training as opposed to normal training. And because you're occluding, you think about your muscle actually as it stretches and as you train it, it releases its own growth factors. Basically, they're called autocrine factors. The muscle actually releases its own IGF-1 and MGF, telling it to grow. Well, when you have normal blood flow, a lot of that gets washed out through the capillaries, and you lose some of that. Whereas when you're occluding, you're keeping all those growth factors in the same place, and they have longer to interact with the receptors. And that's another theory of how occlusion works, is you're keeping those growth factors near the muscle cell for a longer period of time, giving it more time to interact with those receptors and telling it to grow. So it's a really, really interesting style of training. I mean, I don't think it's a replacement for heavy training, but I think it's a really awesome supplement for heavy training. And I would recommend anybody go out and read an article called Practical Occlusion Training, written by Jeremy Lineker. He's a good friend of mine, and he's he's doing his PhD actually in occlusion research, and he has a ton of great stuff. So check him out, Jeremy Lineker, and I think the article is called Practical Occlusion Training.
Cool. Man, that just seems weird because, most of the time it's people say that it's blood flow that causes muscle growth.
Right. Well, but the thing to keep in mind is actually what they've shown is by occluding, your body actually compensates for the occlusion by getting better at blood flow in the long term. Okay. So it's kind of like how when you work out, your heart rate increases, right, but your body compensates for that by lowering its heart rate over time. So people who are athletic have a lower resting heart rate because they get more efficient at it. Similar thing with blood flow. In fact, they've actually tried using occlusion for like people at bed rest because there's a lot of problem with blood flow dynamics with people who are in bed rest. They don't get as much. What they did was they took people who were at bed rest, and all they did was just put on wraps, occluded them for 30 minutes a day. And lo and behold, they had much better blood flow over time than people that just left at normal bed rest. So it actually improves your blood flow over time, even though it restricts it during the time that you're doing it. Your body compensates by getting more effective at delivering blood.
Wow. That's really interesting. That's really interesting.
Click here for part 4 of the Layne Norton interview as we talk about his nutritional philosophy.